Alana, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Victoria, for having me.
We're going to start with 10 quick fire questions so the listeners get to know your vibe. Are you ready?
Oh God, all right, we're just jumping right in the deep end. Okay, great.
I'm just going to drop that on you. It's something that I'd like to do when I have a guest.
I
Okay,
love
so
it. I love it.
they're kind of fun, like easy to answer, most of them. Number one, what's the worst diet you've ever been on?
The one where I ate the least amount of calories possible.
You've been on that
It's just
one.
I think
Yes. What's your favorite food?
chocolate.
Me too. Number three, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you change in the world?
The idea that there's only one type of acceptable, attractive body.
Oh, heaven, yes. Number four, dogs or cats?
Cats.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
Do you have a favorite quote or mantra?
Progress, not perfection.
Mm. Number seven, a relaxing or an adventure holiday. What would you prefer?
Adventure holiday.
Who is your ideal client?
Someone who is sick of chronic yo-yo dieting or is healing from an eating disorder.
Cardio or weights?
Weights.
And last but not least, what do you want people to take away from this podcast? I'm asked that at the beginning.
I want them to know that their struggles with food and body have less to do with their behaviors themselves and the weight itself and more to do with their mindset.
I love that. All right. So thank you, Alana, for being willing to go straight into that. Can you share a bit about your story and how you got to doing the work that you're doing today?
Sure. So my name is Alana Van Der Sluys. I am a certified intuitive eating counselor, and I'm the founder of Freedom with Food and Fitness, where I offer coaching around intuitive eating and mindset work. And I came to this work very similarly to, I think, a lot of other people in the space. Is it personally affected me? I had 3 undiagnosed eating disorders. I had orthorexia, which is just an obsession with clean eating. I body dysmorphic disorder, where what I saw in the mirror was never what I wanted to see. It was, kind of an overblown perception of flaws. And then I had binge eating disorder, where I would go through periods and cycles of restricting and binging, and that took up most of my 20s, which is really sad because your 20s are supposed to be the time that you're having fun and exploring and kind of finding out who you are. And I was plagued with thoughts about what I was going to eat, what I was eating, what I just ate, what my weight was, what it was going to be the next day on the scale. And it consumed me. And it wasn't until I found intuitive eating that I realized that I was not the only person who was struggling with things like this, and that there was another way of life where I could not care about my weight and still pursue health without it being this rigid thing, and be happy and focus my life and my brain space on things that mattered and would evolve me. So it was so eye-opening. And once I healed, I've been an educator for 11 years, and I thought to myself, I want to have a way to marry my skills of teaching with this wonderful blessing of intuitive eating that I found. And that's how the business and what I do now kind of came to be.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. I have a few questions off the bat from that. When you were in the orthorexia, and was that linked to the binge eating? So would you be orthorexic as in obsessed with clean and then binge at the same time?
Yes. Yeah. So that's definitely linked. So the periods of restriction were very much periods where I was quote unquote eating clean. And for me, the way that the binge eating cycle presented itself for me was Monday through Friday would be my time of restriction pretty much. And it would be, I would only allow myself certain foods, the foods that were considered healthy, and it was only a couple of foods. I would allow myself maybe a dozen different foods. And it was like, the typical ones. It was the steamed vegetables and the boiled chicken and the egg whites and, all those things. And then by Friday, I felt very restricted. I felt low energy, and I felt that I quote unquote deserved the food on the weekends that I wasn't allowing myself during the week. And I would go out with, as a 20, some 20 something does, I would go out with my girlfriends, we'd have a couple of cocktails, and my inhibitions would be lowered and my guard would be kind of down a little bit. And I'd be like, I deserve all this food, I'm going to have it. But once you start eating the foods that you are restricting, you can't stop yourself. It's just like this biological pull to keep eating and eating and eating. And once you kind of come up for air from that, you feel, first of all, physically overfull. And then you feel this crushing sense of shame for what you've just done. And you start thinking about, oh my God, I'm going to gain all this weight from this. Like, why did I do that? I have no control. Starting Monday, I'm going to be quote unquote good again. And the cycle continues. And I was like that for 7 years. I could not get myself out of it.
Yeah, I experienced similar. The only thing I haven't related to so much is the orthorexia specifically. So I would be don't really care if it's good for my health, as long as it's low calorie, I'm in. So I would go with probably, those sauces that are literally chemicals because they have no food source in them at all. And they're like zero, I think they're disgusting now, but I was living off them. I'd have low fat yogurt with this chemical sauce, all over.
Yes, I do those 0-calorie syrups and stuff. Oh my God. What is even in those? I don't even know.
Exactly. That is the question. It's not food.
I know. Well, the other thing that I used to have was those yam noodles. They were like the 0-calorie noodles. They smelled disgusting. They tasted the same way, but that's what I would eat because I was so afraid of pasta.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And you said something in your story that I'd like you to dive into. And you said that you learned how to put health first because that was important to you without going back into the diet mentality. So I know this is a whole big conversation just around this, but can you give us some tips or advice on if someone is into their intuitive eating journey? Because I believe that you can't do this right at the beginning because you need the allowance stage of everything anyway. That if someone's ready to start choosing more, and I say quotes, healthy nutrition, nourishing choices, how can they do that without being back to where they were when they were in the cycle?
I think that's a really great question. And I also love that you framed it of you have to have that piece where you allow all foods first, because that's going to be the secret sauce to not binging, is allowing those foods. So that was awesome that you said that. Not that I'm surprised that you said that, because you're also, I know, an expert in the space. But so when we get to the point where we've allowed all foods and we're ready for what we call gentle nutrition, right? My biggest piece of advice would be to build a plate, which what I tell my clients to do is I'll tell them, first think about what you're craving. So let's say you're craving pasta, since we're kind of on that train already. That's your carb, right? Think to yourself, well, what else could I add to this that would taste really good to me, feel really satisfying to me, but also provide me more nourishment? And, we try to get all 3 macronutrients. Not that we count macros, because we're past that at this point, right? Yes. But, what healthy fat could you add to that? What protein could you add to that? So maybe you want to do like cheese or avocado or olive oil as the healthy fat, and chicken, or meatballs, or what kind of building upon what you want in a way that you can try to get all the macronutrients in there, which will keep you fuller longer, keep you nice and satisfied longer, and keep your blood sugar steady so there's no spiking and no crashing. The other piece of advice I would have is to approach gentle nutrition from a place of abundance as opposed to scarcity. So the scarcity mindset is, I can't have that, I shouldn't have that, and cutting foods out. And instead of doing that, coming from a place of abundance where we say, well, what can we add to this meal? Where can I add more vegetables? Where can I drink more water? Where can I add more fiber? So adding things in as opposed to taking them away, because taking them away makes us feel restricted, and that could trigger the binging.
Yes. And I love what you've shared. And I see the word pleasure come to mind. So when you said about building the plate, let's say a protein source is, let's say, chicken. We're not talking boiled plain chicken, unless you like boiled plain chicken, right? It's a protein source that you find pleasurable. So I like to use it's not even a formula. I just have like nourishment plus pleasure equals like my meal. And I cannot eat nourishment unless it's pleasurable. I can eat pleasure without nourishment. And I sometimes do that in terms of like, I mean, chocolate still has nourishment, but I'm not adding fruits and veg in when I'm eating chocolate, but I have to have it as pleasurable. And are you the same?
Oh, absolutely. I have as a nighttime snack either chocolate or ice cream, and it's not like I'm sitting there going, okay, what protein can I add to this ice cream?
Yes.
Like, no, I'm just gonna like have that ice cream. But I mean, like for meals, because snacks can be, sometimes I just want an apple. That's all I want. I don't want anything else on it. And that's totally fine. It doesn't have to be, and that's another thing. It doesn't have to be this like hard and fast rule, because that's what diet culture is all about. Like these rules that you must follow or else you're a bad person. We get rid of that. It's gentle. We call it gentle for a reason, because it's just a guideline. It's not a end all be all.
Yes. And I'm curious to hear your experience with when you gave up the orthorexia, the dieting, all of that, when you started your food freedom journey, did you experience eating a lot of your quote bad binge foods in the start of your journey? How did that like even out for you? Myself personally, I didn't have the philosophy of eating meals. So my meals were just chocolate all day, every day for months, until my body was like, maybe you should eat a vegetable. And then I actually wanted to, but I emphasize meals with my clients as a guideline, not as a rule. So I'm curious what you experience and what you recommend for your clients when they're brand new and they're starting this journey.
Yeah, I always tell people, especially because you have that phase where you're allowing all the foods. If you start to allow foods that you were formerly restricting, it's natural for you to eat more of those in the beginning. And I tell clients, as a result, like you might gain weight in the beginning of this journey. And that's just maybe temporary. Like we don't know. We don't know where your weight set point is, but just allowing the fact that you are going to eat less nourishing foods at the beginning of your journey, because your body and your brain are getting used to trusting you again. And that takes a little bit of time. Unfortunately, intuitive eating isn't the quick fix journey that a diet will promise you, right? It's a longer journey. It's one of patience and determination and compassion and rewiring of the brain, quite frankly. So it does take time, but yeah, there's definitely more of those less nourishing foods at the beginning. There was definitely more ice cream and chocolate. And eventually my brain was like, oh, okay, she really is allowing all of these things. Oh, okay, she's really not going back on a diet this time. So I can trust her.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna lay off here.
Yeah, I experienced that too. And I think it's great to bring in the question that I had for you around getting professional help, because there's so much great content out there. It's great free content from myself, from you, from other people in this space. But in my opinion, there's nothing quite like getting the support from someone who you trust, someone who you relate to, a professional who can support you through and hold your hand step by step. What are your thoughts on, if it's obviously doable for people financially, what's your thoughts on getting support compared to going it alone?
You really have to get support. And I am very transparent in the fact that I never got support. I was that person. I was that person who was like, I can't afford it. I can do this by myself. And I immersed myself in as much free content as possible. But it took me about 7 years to actually recover. And I always say I don't regret my eating disorder at all, or eating disorders rather, but I regret being too stubborn to get the help that I needed because I could have gotten years of my life back. And it's really sad to me that I did. So I don't regret the eating disorder because it brought me to this work and I'm so passionate about this work, but it didn't need to be so long. So I would say, yeah, if you can financially swing it, I would 100% get a coach. And the thing about it is, and I'm very kind of blunt in saying this to people, is I think for 90% of people, getting a coach to heal their issues with food in their body is doable, is financially doable. I think, as long as you have a roof over your head and you can like feed yourself and you're not, starving, I think a lot of people are very afraid to invest in themselves. And I think that's part of the whole problem here is this idea that women are socialized to believe they should put themselves last. They are socialized that investing in mental health is not a requirement, is irresponsible to be using money that way. But I tell people, like, this is a problem you've been having for how long, right? For some people, it's been decades or their whole life. And if I'm telling you that we as coaches have the solution to this problem that's been plaguing you for decades, like, why wouldn't you want to do that? But it's fear. It's fear that they won't be able to do it. It's fear of failure because diets have failed them over and over again. So what are we to assume this is going to be any different? But it is. And you and I are living proof of it.
Exactly that. And I did invest in myself. I mean, I stumbled along the way and kind of took things from different people that worked, found stuff myself and created it myself. But I did get that support. And honestly, I continue to invest in myself. And the transaction, the transformation is in the transaction, right? So when you are like, okay, oh my God, this is really scary. If I have a payment plan, I can just about do this. And you send that money, something shifts inside of you because you have said to the universe and to yourself, I choose me. My recovery is worth it. And then just that alone creates a shift. And then if you have a great coach that believes in you until you believe in yourself, then recovery is like inevitable. There's no such thing as failure, is there? There really isn't.
No, and the thing is even if you're not recovered at the end of a program, as you said, you have this knowledge and this new skill set that you can refine along the way. But in the business world, we talk about ROI, right? It's return on investment. And when you invest in a program like one of ours, you're not throwing money in the toilet and flushing. You're gaining something back, and it's not cash for cash monetary thing. You don't get money back, but you get your life back, you get knowledge back, you get confidence back, you get health back, you get back things that you can't quantify with money. But it's hard, it's scary, it's very scary. I know
it is. And what is in your journey? What else has your journey to food freedom given you that has nothing to do with food? So how is this had been a ripple effect on your whole entire life? Because I know it has for me. I started my own business when I gave up dieting.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I have this whole business because I recovered. I have this, I came to this realization actually quite recently. I remembered when I first started teaching, I still had my eating disorder. And I remember sitting down with a colleague in the gym and saying to her that I would be happy to retire here. I was making 30 grand a month, or 30 grand a year, which again, no shade if that's what you make, but like, I could have been at a school with a pay scale that would give me more. I could have been at a place that wasn't in such a high crime rate area. I had, up until my eating disorder, all of these really big dreams for myself. And all of a sudden I was like, no, I could just stay here forever and just, never grow anymore career-wise or as a person, because I didn't have the brain space at that point to think about anything else but food and my weight. But now that I'm healed, I'm like, I changed districts. I make more money as a teacher now. I have my side business. I have a book coming out next year. I'm doing a TEDx talk next month. Like my life has exploded.
That's so exciting.
I'm so excited. I'm gonna throw up because I'm nervous, but I'm excited too. But I was able to conceive right? I was having so much trouble conceiving. I was able to, grow a family, and I'm so much more spontaneous with my husband. We can go on random date nights we could before the baby, but now it's
Yeah.
a little bit more difficult. But you know what I'm saying? Like my whole life exploded. I was able to think about things that weren't food in my weight. I never think about my weight. I have no idea what I weigh, and it's totally fine.
Yeah, I love that. And it is looking at the bigger picture. And I love Albert Einstein. And he says, I mean, he has many great quotes, but I use this in my coaching, especially in like consultation calls. You cannot solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore,
Yeah.
like, I mean, I've tried to quote stop binging by trying to stop binging. And it makes sense, but then when you really look at it, of course it doesn't make sense.
Right, of course, of course. Well, that's why I keep telling people, and that's kind of like my soapbox niche in the intuitive eating space is you have to change your mindset. You have to know what thoughts are creating the emotions that you're feeling that are causing you to binge. If you
Yeah.
don't understand all of that, you can white knuckle it all you want, but that's never worked for you in the past. So, as you just said, why would it work for you now?
Yeah. And so tell us about your book and why it's different to, I do like the intuitive eating book, but I actually recommend my clients read The Fuck It Diet by Caroline Duna. And
Yes.
potentially when I've read your book, I will most likely be recommending your book to them as well, because the intuitive eating book, again, I don't recommend it, but it's a start. But for me, it's too ruly still. It's too many like they're not doing it like that on purpose, but my brain went to, okay, guidelines, cool, that means rules, that means therefore I have to stick to these things. So why is your book different?
I think it's different in two ways. The first is that it's split into two. So it's called Freedom with Food and Fitness, just like my business. But so half the book is about food and half of the book is about fitness. And I feel like there are not a lot of books out there in the intuitive eating space that talk about the joyful movement portion, which I think is a shame, because we always talk about quote unquote diet and exercise. Like
Yeah.
exercise and our relationship with exercise is half the battle when it comes to our body image issues. So I feel like there wasn't enough being discussed about that portion. And number two is I kind of felt the same way you did about the intuitive eating book. It's a great start. It's a great base for understanding the philosophy behind the 10 principles. But it's mostly just philosophy. It's mostly just kind of explaining, kind of what it ideally looks like. And I felt there was a lack of really realistic, tangible, actionable steps within that book that somebody could apply to their life that day. So that's what the book really is. It's lots of tips and tricks and strategies that are really realistic to implement inside somebody's busy life. So it's things like meal prepping in a gentle way, understanding that you can meal prep and that it doesn't have to be this pretty flowery Martha Stewart looking thing that you took all of Sunday to do. You could use primarily frozen foods, to get your meal prepping done, and instant foods like, instant oatmeals and rices. And it doesn't have to be this homemade thing. So kind of meal prepping in a way that you have nourishing foods available. You don't have to eat them. They're not a rigid, schedule you have to stick to, but how to do it in a way that you have nourishing foods on hand and it doesn't take up all of your Sunday. So that's kind of what I do in the book. Lots of actionable strategies.
I love that. I'm looking forward to reading it. Is it going to be audio bookable as well eventually?
Yep, it's going to be worldwide. It's going to be English and Spanish. It's going to be on Amazon, online, in stores like Barnes and Noble, and it's going to be hardcover, softcover, audiobook, and ebook as well.
Oh, that is so exciting! Congratulations!
Thank you.
Very amazing. Excited. And I was stalking your Instagram, and we know each other anyway from the Undiet app. I will mention that in the intro, but yeah, I forgot to mention that that's how we met each other. And I've been stalking your Instagram, and I loved I love many of your posts, but one post stuck out in particular. And that was about the stress response when eating and how that has a profound effect on gut health. So can you talk about what that means? Like, what does a stress response mean when you're eating, and how can we go into rest and digest? And why do we have a stress response, most of us, when we eat?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So yeah, there's something called the gut-brain axis, and that basically just means that there is a connection, a very real connection between your brain and your digestive system. So when we sit down to eat, if we are very stressed and very anxious, be it, because of something else going on in our lives or because of the food we're about to eat, it can lead to a lot of digestive issues. And that poses a problem for people that don't know about the gut brain axis, because they might be thinking, oh, I can't have this food, it doesn't agree with me. Like, oh, I can't have gluten because I always get a stomach ache after, or whatever. And then they like think that they have to cut gluten out, and they start cutting out all these foods that they don't need to. When in reality, the problem might very well be the fact that they're just so stressed that their body can't digest food properly at that point. So as you said, we want to get to a point of rest and digest. So my biggest piece of advice would be, when you sit down to eat, to take 3 cleansing breaths and really activate that parasympathetic nervous system, that nervous system in our body that tells us to calm down, slow the heart rate down, and eat without distraction. That's another thing, is just be very mindful. And also, maybe many people are anxious when they sit down to eat because of what they're eating, right? They think they shouldn't be eating it, or it's too much or whatever. Just kind of remembering that you can tap into your fullness, right? You'll know when to stop, you'll feel when to stop. And that one meal or 1 week of eating, or even 1 month or year of eating, it doesn't have a huge impact on your health, right? It's just our health, and our health is an accumulation of years and years and years of habits. And our weight set range, our body's always going to try to get to our weight set range. So 1 meal, our body will adjust, like our body will be fine. So it's just finding ways to calm yourself down.
Yeah, I still take deep breaths before I eat, because I used to have a stress response whenever I ate a dessert. So normal food was fine. And then I'd sit down to eat a dessert or chocolate, even when I was like well on the way into recovery and like really not feeling any guilt or anything. But my body would be like this. And then I would be like noticing that I'm eating it quite fast because I saw it as a threat unconsciously. And I'm just trying to consciously enjoy this food. But like unconsciously, I guess it's like diet trauma was like coming up and being like, this is unsafe, like because of however many times I've restricted it and then binged on it. And so just to like take a deep breath and just relax into it, that just the power of having a deep breath is very powerful. So I recommend everyone do that, regardless of whether they're in a stress response before eating, because it just brings everything grounding and connecting. You also connect to your body on a deeper level, don't you, as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, now that I'm an intuitive eater, I can tell my hunger cues. And I think a lot of people who um, are new to this work, they think the only sign of hunger is a growling stomach. They don't realize that things like, lightheadedness and irritability and numbness and tingling in the extremities, those all can be early signs of hunger, and they miss those, and that could partially be the reason you're binging. So getting more in touch with your hunger cues and your fullness cues and a bunch of other bodily sensations. But I have to say this before we continue, is you are the only person who has said that they felt like they couldn't catch their breath before a meal. I experienced that too, and I thought it was crazy. I was on Reddit for I can't tell you how many hours. And this is like the first time someone has said that. And I just kind of figured the same thing you just said, that it was anxiety about getting ready to eat. But like, I feel like no one's talking about this. Why isn't anybody talking about this?
I'm so glad you've shared, Alana, because no word of a lie, I've not heard anyone share it before. And I've reflected and linked it to past diet related trauma, but I've never heard anyone speak about it before. It was like I couldn't get a breath or something. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I'll be sat there eating chocolate and I'll be like, and then my boyfriend will be like, are you okay? And it's like, well, no, because my chest can't get air in or something.
Oh my God.
If
It feels so
anyone listening to this or watching this relates to me and Alana, please let us know so we're not the only ones.
I feel so
Wow.
seen right now. I can't even tell you. And I mean,
I do too.
it's, oh my God. And like, I don't have it now anymore. Unless I'm stressed about something else, I
Me
can
too.
feel it come up sometimes.
If I've like got a busy schedule and I'm like looking at my agenda, like, why have I done this to myself? I'm fine consciously and I'm like dead happy. And then I'm like, like, why can't I take a deep breath properly? And I try and meditate. It makes it worse because whenever I focus on my breath, it just makes it worse. And so I just like, for me, the out breath is more powerful than trying to get it in. And then naturally, if I like open my heart and then open my shoulders, it becomes easier. But I just thank you for sharing that as well with me, that you experience the same.
Yeah, yeah. And I agree with you. If you exhale all of the air out, it's easier to get that full breath in. Oh my gosh, I am so happy.
Listeners, please let us know if you experience the same. We would honestly love to hear. And I would love to delve into now, Alana, your body dysmorphia journey. And did you experience weight gain in your recovery? And if so, how did you navigate that?
Um, from my lowest to recovery, yes. And I guess this is the power of weight set ranges. Before I had my eating disorder, I weighed a certain number. And then during my eating disorder, I lost a certain amount of weight. But then when I became an intuitive eater, it went right back to it went right back to reset, which I thought was so fascinating. But how did I navigate it? I stopped weighing myself. And that was so scary to me. But I relate it to this video that I encourage everybody to watch. It's Will Smith. You can find it on YouTube. It's Will Smith talking about the first time he went skydiving and how he and his buddies had made this agreement that the next morning they were going to go skydiving. And he was like, oh, yeah, great. They were like all drunk or something. Like, yeah, great. Sounds good. And then he was lying awake in bed that night, like, oh my God, I just agreed to go skydiving. He was so nervous, so much anxiety leading up to when he jumped out of the plane. But he said once he jumped out of that plane, all the fear went away. And it was like this moment of pure bliss. And I find that very often. Every time I have a speaking engagement, I'm so nervous beforehand. But once I get on the stage, it kind of melts away. And I felt the exact same way when I didn't get on the scale that first morning. I was so nervous leading up to this day that I was going to decide to stop. And the day I woke up, I was a little scared in the morning at the time I would normally weigh myself. But as the day went on, I found that my day just went along normally and nothing bad happened. And I went to bed that night and I woke up the next morning and I still didn't know what I weighed, but I was the exact same person as the days that I weighed myself. Like nothing changed. The world didn't come crumbling down and it was okay. So I always encourage people to, if you're not ready to ditch the scale forever, see what a day is like, see what a week is like. And if it really scares you, you can always go back, but you might be pleasantly surprised to find out that you are the same person, regardless of what weight you might be.
Yeah, I stopped weighing myself years ago now. I weighed myself last year purposely so I speak to my weight sometimes in my episodes because I talk about BMI, right? And so my BMI is like 28, 29, which is classed in the very overweight category. And that just helps me to decipher like it's just all bullshit. And by the way, if I was like, what does fat even mean? If I was in the plus size clothing, that would also be okay as well. So I'm not saying it's okay just because I'm not a plus size. I'm not saying that. Like all bodies are to be celebrated. Everyone is so different. But regardless, BMI, it's just a load of bullshit. And people that really focus on a weight that they had maybe when they were at high school or something, and they're like 30-year-old women, and they have this fantasy weight of like, before I had kids and before I did this, and I want to get back down to that weight. Well, you're screwed because you're going to spend your whole entire life chasing that weight. For what reason? To feel confident and happy in their body. You can do that at any weight though.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, that's the thing is that a lot of women come to me and they're like, I'll be happy when I'm X weight. And I'm like, that is a lie, because, and I experienced that too. I had a goal weight. I met it when I had my eating disorder. And then I was happy for like, I don't know, a day or two. And then I was like, well, I can get lower. And then that was my next goal weight. And I never found that happiness in a certain weight, because it wasn't a goal number that I was really chasing. I was chasing the feeling of feeling like I was in control and that I was enough. And I wasn't going to find it that way.
And my favorite thing to ask my clients when they're chasing that enoughness, I say to them, okay, when will you ever be enough? You tell me what you need to do to be enough. Guess what their answer is? I'll never be. There's nothing that I can do where I will feel that I am enough. So I'm like, okay, given that information, when are you going to choose a new narrative that you're already enough now? And then obviously it's not just as simple as that. That can have a big shift when that's in like a coaching situation, when they're kind of like, oh shit, like I've been chasing my not enoughness and there's no end goal ever. And so when am I going to change that? And then of course, then comes the action to create and to cement that belief that no way, I am enough as I am. And then it goes from there. But it's a feeling of not being enough. And the weight, because society celebrates thinness, as of course you know, we think we will be enough if we reach a certain weight, but then that's not enough when you get there. So then you need something else to be enough. And it will literally ruin and take over your whole life until you stop. And that's what I did, and just be like, enough is enough. I cannot do this anymore. I'm literally going to just run myself into the ground and I can't see a way out anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you said they have to choose to know that they're enough now. I think the two operative words there being choosing and now. You have to just choose in the present moment, regardless of body size, what's in your bank account, who your partner is, whether you have a partner, regardless of all the external factors. You have to choose to feel like you're enough right now, not when you have, a certain goal weight or you fit into a certain size dress or any of that, because it's never going to give you lasting happiness. And also the idea of lasting happiness is total bullshit.
Yeah.
Right. No matter how rich you are, beautiful you are, skinny you are, life is 50-50 and you're going to have your bad moments. It's just going to be a different breed of bad moment.
Amen to that. And, I used to have happiness as a quote goal, a life goal, when I started to get into personal development, and I let go of all the weight and diet bullshit. I still was like, okay, cool. I've let go of all of that. But now like my goal is to be happy. Whereas if your goal is to be happy, you're going to fail, because instead of happiness, I chose then, when I understood this, my goal is to have fulfillment in every life experience. We're going to be happy, sad, angry, disappointed. That's life. Yes, we can learn how to manage our emotions so they're not as so up and down. But if you can find fulfillment through everything, regardless of whether something's sad, that is true peace and freedom. Happiness is just, it's a fleeting feeling that you can spend more time feeling if you're in alignment with your life, but it's not the goal.
Right. And I think that when we feel like we should be happy all the time and we have a moment of negative emotion, we throw shame on top of it, because we're like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this way. And then we feel even worse. Like if we just realize that we can just sit with it and process it and let it be a teacher for maybe some sort of disruption in equilibrium that we're having. Like, well, why do I feel so anxious or so stressed or so sad? And what is my brain and my body trying to teach me in this moment? How can I use this instead of being like, you shouldn't feel this way, stuff it down.
Positive affirmation, quick, positive affirmation. Doesn't work. Absolutely. It's creating and making space for all the feelings, feeling them, expressing them, letting it go. If you want to dig deeper and understand like where it's come from and why, go ahead. But I don't believe we have to, right? If we just keep feeling, expressing, releasing, feeling, expressing, releasing. Like the Buddha's teachings, like don't get attached to anything, even a beautiful moment that you want to hold on to forever. The second you try and hold on to that, you're not in the present moment, you're missing the present moment that's happening now. And so I know we've kind of gone on a spiritual turn here, but it's, as humans, we want to grasp onto things. But even doing that with positive things, that's actually not living in the moment. And it's just like being a vessel of experience and letting it go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so how did you, I'm curious if you could give us, like, if it's possible to give like 3 tangible action steps or mindset shifts for someone who is looking in the mirror and really hates the mirror image that's staring back at them. And they're on their intuitive eating journey. They know dieting isn't the answer. They know that being thin will only make them temporarily happy. So they've got the base of the knowledge there and they're really wanting to accept their body. Like, what tips can you give them? What helped you to accept yours when you was in the dysmorphia?
The first one is looking at the way that we feel about our body as a spectrum. So you might have body hate right now, body dissatisfaction, and you might want to achieve body positivity. But again, like the happiness, we don't feel positive all of the time about our bodies. Like I am recovered, I am an expert in this space. And there are still days I wake up and look in the mirror and I'm like, I don't like what I see completely,
Yeah.
which is fine, which is totally fine. It doesn't mean that I engage in any behaviors that I used to. I know how to process those thoughts and those emotions that come up. But if you try to go from body hate to body love, your brain's going to be like, I call bullshit. You do not love your thighs. Like, and it's just going to backfire. So I like to say, let's try to get to a place of body neutrality where we just think really in really objective terms about our body. So instead of, I hate my thighs, they're disgusting, or I love my thighs, they're so beautiful, can you just say, I have a set of human thighs. These thighs help me to walk up and down the stairs every day. They allow me to walk, right? Whatever it is, but just focusing on, you have this body part, or you have this body, and this is what it can do for you. This is what it allows you to do in the world. That's the first one. So focusing on body neutrality as opposed to body positivity. The second thing, which it kind of bleeds into it, is thinking about what your body can do for you. Gratitude. Starting a daily gratitude practice. And it doesn't even have to be related to your body, but things outside of your body. You know, who do you have in your life? What are you good at? What makes you laugh? What, you know, do you have a roof over your head? Are you able to buy groceries? Do you have a car? Do you, like, I try to, when I wake up in the morning, have a very conscious thought of, I just woke up. Not everybody else is going to wake up today. You know what I mean? And then I go into my son's room, my son's too. And I, like a creep, I listen for his breathing. And I'm like, okay, I woke up and he's still here. We're good. Like baseline, I've had success today, you know? And then I'll go downstairs. I'll be like, oh, I have a coffee maker that makes me hot coffee. And I have a shower that gives me hot, you know what I'm saying? Like the littlest things I'll try to hone in on. And it creates this feeling of gratitude, and not only for the things that you have, but for yourself. Like if you make somebody laugh, that's awesome. That should be part of the gratitude practice. And then a third thing I would say is, you know, buy clothes that fit you well. Buy clothes that you feel confident in, that are comfortable, and that fit your body right now. Don't try to fit into clothes that you wish you could fit into, because all that's going to do is make you feel restricted and make you kind of fixate on what you're wearing and tugging at it and doing all these things. Wear clothes that fit you. Do not worry about the size, because sizing is so ridiculous. I am like 4 different sizes depending on the store. Like even in the same store, the same size, but different cut pants, one fits me, one doesn't. I'm like, I don't even know what to do here. And, you know, I understand that there are financial constraints. Some people can't afford to buy a whole new wardrobe, and that's fine. There are things like Facebook Marketplace. If you have girlfriends that are the same size as you, do a swap. You know, Salvation Army or consignment shops. There are plenty of places where you can get a few staple pieces where you just feel really, really good. And if you can't afford to go buy clothes at the store, I just did a reel on this actually. Take a couple of sizes of something that you like and then try them on with your back toward the mirror and focus on how the clothes feel as opposed to how they look. And then you can turn around and look in the mirror and see if you like the way that it looks. But when you're trying them on, don't look at what size you're trying on. Just try on the first one that's in your hand and don't worry about the sizing. Even if you want to, once you buy, cut off the tags before you can even look at the size, great. Just not focusing on the size, focusing on the fit and the comfort level. So those are my three: body neutrality, gratitude practice, and comfortable clothes.
Thank you. And I agree with the sizing. With the same shop, and they're both dresses, they're different cuts. I have one size 8 and one size 16. Same body, same day, same changing room minute. And one's an 8 and one's a 16.
That's 4 sizes of a difference.
Like you.
Oh, insane.
And honestly, this size doesn't bother me anymore. It used to. And of course, I understand the fear when my clients share that. But it would even help the fear if it made sense. Doesn't even make sense, though. A size 8 is not a size 8, depending on where you go. And so it's just like, buy clothes to fit your body. Don't try and fit. Because I used to then not buy the thing because it wasn't a certain size, and then find a shop that had the size and it was a 10 in the UK that I had to fit into, or an 8. And if it was a 12, I wasn't buying it, which is just ridiculous. But I'm so glad I'm over that now.
Yeah. And to your point, like, even with sizing that is supposed to be inches, it's still off, which is just so weird to me. Like, isn't inches supposed to be inches? I don't know. I know that's I know that's an American thing, the inches thing, but like, what is that? I don't even understand. It's a unit of measurement.
So take clothes size with a pinch of salt. Buy clothes to fit your body. Your body's not supposed to fit clothes. Clothes are supposed to fit your body. And so I would, just before we start to wrap up, what is the chill the fuck out method?
Oh God, I love the chill the fuck out method. All right. So it is my signature coaching framework. It's the method I use with all of my clients in our private sessions, our one-to-one sessions. So it's based on cognitive behavioral therapy. It's this whole idea that our thoughts create our emotions, which drive our actions. So the way that I frame it is, again, chill the fuck out, because I feel like that's what everybody needs to do. C, the chill for C stands for circumstance. So those are the neutral events that occur in our lives, whether we binge eat, even when somebody dies, right? Like that's actually neutral until we assign meaning to it. And a lot of the times, if it's a loved one, we choose consciously to be sad, right? Because that's, what you probably want to do. But yeah, C, circumstance, neutral things that happen in our lives. Those circumstances, we create thoughts. That's the T for thoughts. We create thoughts, we assign meaning to things that happen in our lives. So if you have a binging episode, a lot of people will take that neutral event and think, oh my God, I'm so out of control. I have no willpower. I'm so disgusting. I can't get over this. I'm never going to be able to stop. They have all these thoughts. And all those thoughts, which are super negative thoughts, those create the F, the feelings, the emotions of guilt and shame and hopelessness. Right. And those emotions are what drive the outcomes. We restrict again because we feel so shameful and out of control for what we've done. And then that restriction leads to the next binge. So it's chill the fuck out, circumstance, thought, feeling, outcome. So what I'd like to do with my clients is reverse engineer that. Say, okay, what do you want your outcome of life to be? Like, who do you want to be? Who do you want future you to be? Okay, once you figure that out, what emotions do you need to feel most of the time in order to create that future you, that future outcome? Once you know what emotions you need to feel, okay, what thoughts would trigger those emotions that you need to feel? So what thoughts do you need to believe? What thoughts do you need to adopt? And what thoughts have you been thinking that don't serve you that you need to get rid of?
Yeah.
Right? And then circumstances, you can't do anything with those. Those just happen. They're neutral. But yeah, that's what I do with my clients.
I love that. It's like a thought model. I use something similar, but that's a way better name. Mine's just the thought model. Yours is like an awesome name. I love that. And it's how you reframe it. It's so true. Our thoughts do create our reality.
Yeah.
And so before I ask you about your book and how clients can work with you, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to share or talk about?
I do offer coaching, so I definitely want to just kind of plug that in there. I know that my enrollment will be closed by the time this comes out, but that's okay. I offer it 4 times a year, once a season. So if you're interested in working with me as a coach, I offer group and private coaching. I offer 5 different packages at this point with different levels of support at different price points. They all have a payment plan, so it's super affordable depending on what type of support that you want. But that's at freedomwithfoodandfitness.com. So you can check that out there. I would love to have as many people in the program as possible.
I love that. And your book, so when is it officially out? Are you sure yet? Do you have a date?
I don't. The pub date got moved back. They're still signing contracts and things like that. Everything in publishing takes much longer than they say it's going to. So, which is fine. So I don't as of right now. It's going to be sometime in 2023. So once pre-sale comes out, I'm sure we'll put the link in your show notes and things like that. But it's going to be a pre-sale at freedomwithfoodandfitness.com, or we'll be doing a pre-sale on Amazon. So either way.
Awesome. And then of course I'll put everything below in terms of your Instagram handle, so go and follow Alana there as well. And thank you, Alana, for your time and your energy today. It's been wonderful chatting to you, and it's gone so quick.
I know. This was really nice, Victoria. Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. Much love to you, listeners, and I'll see you next week. Bye.